Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Kentucky to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, Adam Keller. Today, we talk to Sam Seder from the Majority Report about Trump's plans to destroy the state. We also react to the state of the state from Republicans and Democrats in Alabama. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number. The line will not be open until the second half of the program, but you can leave us a voicemail at any time at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, you can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at The Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or just make a one-time donation, you can go to tvlr.fm/donate or patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. We also have a bunch of really cool merch for sale at tvlr.fm/store. We have our logo dad cap and union-made matchbooks. And also, I just talked to the manufacturer of the unionized t-shirts yesterday, and we should still be on track to get those in at the end of the month. So I will continue to keep you updated on that. Finally, if you're a member of a union, then please do think about getting your local or national or state council to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. And we welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Unclaimed Mysteries Internet Radio, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WMMT, WGOW, WLWI, or through your favorite podcast app. We are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. And as most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Whether you're a loyal fan or first-time listener, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
That's right, and with that, let's go ahead and jump right into Last Week in Southern Labor. Last Week in Southern Labor is a segment that we do every single week where we take a look at what working people are up to in the southern United States and the American colonies. Here's what they were up to from January 31st to February the 7th. I will also make sure to add that all of the information about Florida's public sector organizing comes from McKenna Schuler, a staff reporter for the Orlando Weekly and creator of the Caring Class Revolt Substack, available at caringclassrevolt.substack.com. You can find information about Florida's public sector organizing there first, along with more details about the campaigns in her monthly Florida Union Election Roundup. In addition to her Florida Union Election Roundup, she also has regular articles on her Substack, as well as a monthly report on union busters in the state of Florida. So Follow her if you haven't. Without further ado, in new union campaigns, 18 workers at Starbucks in Tampa, Florida filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Workers United, as did 17 more workers at a location in Louisville, Kentucky. 49 workers at Rhino Staging in Nashville, Tennessee filed a petition to hold a union election with the Appalachian Concert Riggers Union, not an affiliate of IATSE, notably. 13 workers at American Electric Power Company in Bluefield, West Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW, Local 978. 150 workers at BWXT-NOG in Lynchburg, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers, Iron Shipbuilders, Blacksmith Forgers, and Helpers, IBB. 93 workers at A National Transit in Atlanta, Georgia, filed a petition to hold a union election with Teamsters Local 728. And 8 security guards at ADC Ltd NM in Memphis, Tennessee, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Union of Security Police and Fire Professionals of America, SPFPA. 20 security guards at Paragon System in Washington, D.C., filed a petition to hold a union election with SPFPA. 178 workers at the City of Homestead, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with the Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 630, and 82 workers for the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, filed a petition to hold a union election with IBEW Local 728. There are many, many other new union campaigns in Florida and across the South, but we will not be able to get to them in the radio segment, so make sure you subscribe to the newsletter for the full roundup. TVLR.fm. In campaign updates, Amazon workers in North Carolina are kicking off their union election week with a rally today. In election results, 112 workers at care centers of Nassau in Fernandina Beach, Florida, voted 70-6 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 947. 58 workers at Unity Healthcare in Washington, D.C. voted 42-0 in favor of unionization with 1199 SEIU United Healthcare Workers East. 631 workers for Putnam County Public Schools in Palatka, Florida, voted 169-2 in favor of recertifying the Putnam Federation of Teachers as their union. 410 workers at Credence Management Solutions in Washington, D.C. withdrew their petition for a union election with IBEW Local 1900, and 168 workers at Titan, Florida, voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 769. In settlements, grievances, and unfair labor practices, an NLRB administrative law judge found that Amazon in Florida illegally retaliated against a pro-union worker and ordered the company remove the discipline from his file. In strikes and bargaining updates, nurses in New Orleans went on another 2-day strike as management at the University Medical Center continued to refuse to agree to a fair contract. Rank-and-file state workers in Florida have no pay raise in DeSantis's proposed budget. Those same employees lost their union only last year. UAW members at Ford are receiving a record-breaking $10,208 profit-sharing check as a result of increased profits for the company and the 2023 contract win. This following similar news at GM. The NLRB union has a thread on Twitter outlining a recent OPM, quote, fork in the road follow-up email where it appears that the agency admits that many of the things that critics were saying about the buyout are true. Some IRS employees who took the deal are now being told that they have to work until at least March the 15th. Trump apparently forgot about tax season, which is an episode that illustrates the need actually for more IRS personnel, not less, for the efficient administration of the country's tax system. The Teamsters continue contract negotiations with United Airlines, pointing out that the company's stock increased by the largest amount of any airline last year at 180%, but instead of agreeing to invest in their workers with a fair contract with the Teamsters, they spent $1.5 billion on stock buybacks, which, it's worth remembering, used to be considered illegal stock manipulation before Ronald Reagan, the devil. Former National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA officials told CBS News that current employees have been told to expect a 50% reduction in staff and budget cuts of 30%, reports Laura Geller and Tracy Wolf. This agency and the National Weather Service are important for maintaining readiness for natural disasters. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, where Russ Vought was recently confirmed, someone who wants to make federal workers into, quote, villains, put out a memo saying that agencies can ignore previously agreed to telework agreements with unions, a blatant violation of federal labor law. Hertz workers in West Palm Beach, Florida, unionized with the Teamsters, Local 769, are on an unfair labor practice strike against the company. In political and legislative updates, Texas retirees, get this, have gone 23 years without a pension increase. AFSCME Texas retirees are trying to change that. Texas is attempting to pass a school voucher scam like many other states. Unions have opposed it, but it recently passed the state Senate, and the House Speaker says it likely has the support to pass there as well. A college student in North Carolina had her scholarship revoked due to her activism. Federally funded community health centers, including those in Virginia, are beginning to shut down due to the federal funding freeze, despite the fact that it was supposed to have been lifted. A science teacher in Florida has already been detained by immigration officials and likely deported to Honduras, according to the Miami Herald. The paper has been unable to independently verify his immigration status, but said that he likely had either temporary protected status or DACA. His union, the United Teachers of Dade, sent a letter to the immigration judge who ordered him deported, but has not yet received a response. The NLRB is dropping its defense of the constitutionality of its structure in a federal lawsuit brought against it by Elon Musk and SpaceX. It's worth noting, though, that the case isn't about the constitutionality of the entirety of the NLRB and the NLRA, just its system of administrative law judges and some of the protections for board members. There is still concern, however, that the Supreme Court could take the case and use it to dissolve the whole system of labor relations in this country. Musk's DEI hire Doge Bros are in hot water over saying things like, I kid you not, normalize Indian hate, and, quote, I was racist before it was cool. This initially prompted the one responsible for those comments to resign before Elon Musk said he would bring him back on only hours after his resignation. J.D. Vance, married to an Indian woman, is pretending to believe that the argument is binary: give this racist a top government job as a teenager or ruin his life, when this is obviously not the case. He can work any number of rank and file jobs like the rest of us, including in unionized workplaces where I would welcome him as a co-worker. However, he should not have authority at the top of the largest employer on earth. It's very simple, actually. The union at CFPB, at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is also under fire from Elon Musk, also points out that these kids have, quote, lawyer daddies that the CFPB is going after for scamming people, but that they, quote, welcome our newest colleagues and look forward to the smell of Axe body spray in our elevators. These teens have been given access to IT systems in the Department of Energy over objections from the General Counsel, although reportedly not to portions that hold nuclear information, but that's probably next. In other power consolidating moves, the administration has indefinitely paused the work of a federal workplace safety council made up of agency heads and union leaders that was set up by Congress in the law, not the president. The president ending a council set up by Congress through the law is obviously a violation of the separation of powers, but who cares anymore? Trump also purports to have removed a member of the Federal Election Commission, but the member of the commission said her status on the commission, quote, isn't changing anytime soon, so we're likely to see a lawsuit over that as well. Obviously, lots of other political updates too, but again, you gotta subscribe to the newsletter for that. In internal union affairs, many unions in the United States are international organizations representing workers both in the United States and Canada. Many are making statements condemning the attacks on the U.S.'s northern neighbor, likely lest they risk disaffiliation by their Canadian members. The unions issuing such statements include the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, and the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE. 2 professional hockey players' unions joined the AFL-CIO, leaving only the NBA Players Association as the final major pro sports union not to be within the House of Labor, although AFL-CIO President Liz Schuler said she's working on that. So if we missed anything, be sure to let us know at tvlr.fm/contact, and we'll try to include it in next week's roundup. We're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back with the Majority Report's Sam Seder.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger food drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth shall go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host Adam Keller. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank you very much. You can leave us an email at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. I said email, but I meant voicemail. You can also send us a written message at tvlr.fm/contact. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. We have on the line now Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report. Sam, welcome back to the program. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Jacob. It's great to be here. Forgive me, my voice is a little bit raspy. I've been fighting a cold.
No worries at all, and appreciate you fighting through it, being willing to come on the show even with a cold. I do appreciate it. Hopefully you're going to be on the mend very soon.
Yeah, let's hope so. Sorry, I need to get some tissue.
So, for those who don't know, I think most of our audience is going to be aware of you, but Sam Seder hosts the Majority Report. It's a progressive political talk show on YouTube and as a podcast. It started on the radio, although as far as I know, you are no longer on the radio anymore, but people can find you all over the internet. More than, is it millions of subscribers or 1 point something million? Lots of subscribers on YouTube. So I listen very, very regularly. And you've been talking obviously about stuff that's been going on in the Trump administration and his attacks on the state. And you've been referencing, this, this clip from Steve Bannon back during the first administration where he talked about how the goal is to kind of dismantle the administrative state. And, a lot of that kind of talk does have support among a lot of people. And Asmongold on YouTube, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is a politics streamer on Twitch, puts clips out on YouTube, and I'm gonna show you like the first 10 seconds from a recent YouTube video that got over 1 million views. This one, where he kind of expresses like a pop level sentiment about what's going on with these Doge and quote unquote efficiency efforts. Let's play this clip from Asmongold.
There's a lot of retards that work at the federal government that do basically nothing. And so Doge is made to get rid of those retards, right? To delete them.
And so, I think that's more crudely probably than most people would put it, but that's kind of like a popular sort of, or I mean, I don't know exactly actually how popular it is, but there are a significant number of people that actually believe stuff like that believe that lots of federal workers are just sucking on the government teat, and there's so much waste, and a lot of it is going to greedy, lazy federal workers, and there's so much waste in the federal government. Why do you think that kind of talk has appeal?
Can I swear on this, or we're on the radio?
We're on the radio, yeah. So keep it
all right,
PG.
well, because I got some choice words for that guy, but no, look, I think the idea of, we're living in an era where after, 50 years now of a broad neoliberal consensus in our government that the markets can do better and government is largely, in the way. I mean, this started with Reagan, and government workers have been scapegoated for at least, actively for at least half that time as somehow being problematic. And I can appreciate why, people want efficiency in government. People want efficiency in everything. I mean, I don't know if you've dealt with your cable company lately, but the idea that you want people to be working and providing service for you, I think is a universal one. But the idea that guy has any clue as to what government workers does is a joke. And the idea, just even broadly speaking, that what, Doge, which is the name of his meme coin, incidentally. I mean, he's just using this to market himself. Right. The idea that Doge is in any way about efficiency is absolutely a joke. They're not doing an audit. They're going in there and they're destroying stuff. And, this is like the equivalent of saying, I don't like the furniture this guy is making in his shop, and going in and destroying the tools. That's what they're doing. They're destroying the apparatus of our government to provide for people. People should understand that, largely speaking, almost universally, government agencies exist for one reason. Now, there's some that have alternate reasons as well, but broadly speaking, government agencies exist to curb corporate power. They are there to basically make sure that corporations are not externalizing their costs on the rest of us. It is cheaper for a corporation to dump their chemical byproducts into a river, but they save money, they increase their profits, but we pay as a society in increased cancer rates, in birth defects, in our fish dying, et cetera, et cetera. And so what Elon Musk is doing is no different from what Republicans generally do. This has been their plan. Their plan was written up by a guy named Russell Vogt, who the Democrats, stage a futile filibuster against the other day, but good for them for fighting against him, whose plan is to go and demoralize federal workers to get them to quit so that you don't have people working at the EPA, the FDA, the National Labor Relations Board, Department of Labor. You don't have people working at the SEC for that matter, or countless of other agencies who are professionals and who have been working at this and who are actually in these jobs to do their jobs. And they want to replace them with lackeys, essentially. And so, I understand the desire to be paying into a system that is providing benefits to you. And there are certainly in some instances where we have agencies that are not doing that in the way that we want them to, but that's an issue for lawmakers. It is not for a billionaire to come in there, pretend like he's going to take out this agency or that agency, and understand a lot of it is for cover. He doesn't care about USAID. He cares about the Consumer Protection, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He doesn't care about, whether there's aid going to foreign countries. He cares about getting rid of the EPA. It is a bait and switch. And it's also just, it's destruction of our system of government. And, someday my hope is we're going to get people who are running this government who are going to be more oriented towards providing benefits and support for working people and average Americans. And they're not going to be able to do that if there's no apparatus left after this.
Right. Exactly. And, it is so, I can understand exactly like you said, you want to see, efficiency, especially when your money is going to something. But I think particularly with reference to federal workers, I think my running hypothesis is that people who feel very, very strongly about that have never worked or interacted with a significant amount of people in both sectors, right? I mean, if you want to talk about,
of course,
there are people that are lazy within the government. Have you ever worked for a private company? Have you ever have you ever been in a management meeting, in a big corporate meeting, with private actors? I mean, the idea that the federal government is the workforce or even management at the agency level is uniquely inept within the government is just so silly. It kind of belies a real lack of understanding about the world and a lack of like worldliness, a lack of interaction with people, you know, and I will say that Asmongold, you know, I found this out when I was trying to research for this segment a little bit. Like he apparently he talked about how I used to work for the federal government, so I know there's a bunch of people that are terrible. He worked for 2 tax seasons at the IRS, presumably as some sort of like, you know, temporary hire, some sort of thing, right? And
well,
so now
he doesn't. Of course, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But,
exactly.
But I mean, if you just want to look at it as a data matter, every dollar that goes to the IRS in terms of funding returns like $6 to $7 in revenue. So, like, I mean, you know, if you want to measure it on a data level, it's a 6 to every dollar you spend gets you 6 more for the U.S. government. I mean, it's quite obvious that they're doing their job there.
Exactly. And
frankly, if for every dollar you spent on the IRS, it was getting 10 or 20 back, these guys would be screaming even more because they don't want to pay their taxes. I mean, this is everything we're seeing is just Republicanism, right-wing conservatism, repackaged into a slightly sexier veneer. And yes, anybody who's worked in corporate America knows that like job number 1 is to cover your butt. And you know, there are definitely there are good people who work in every industry and in every capacity for the most part. But the US government is far more efficient than corporate America. You know, broadly speaking, I mean, there's, again, I think we could look at the defense budget and see that, you know, lobbying gets a lot of money.
The one agency, by the way, that is completely exempt from the hiring freeze.
Of course, it's on its face, it's total BS, but there is a relentless stream of misinformation and propaganda about this, you know, from Joe Rogan on one end, up through CNN about this, because they are all in different ways making money off of creating this myth. Look, people don't make a lot of money off of providing social services.
Right.
They just don't. I mean, you don't
a
have
really
investors.
Quick story about that is, you know, I think that you're familiar with Matt Bruenig. He is, you know, he talks about politics. He writes about politics. He's a former NLRB attorney that was fired from the agency because of a tweet, which is kind of funny, about like Neera Tanden or something. But he said that immediately, like the week that he was fired from the NLRB, a management side law firm came offering him more than double what he was making at the NLRB to come and work for them. And so especially in the agencies that they are targeting, like the EPA, the CFPB, the NLRB, the DOL, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, all of these agencies, every single one of those civil servants could go and work for management and make 2 to 3 times more immediately, right? And so you're exactly right that, you know, by and large, you know, the people who are working in these agencies, there's some level of commitment and like give a crap about the idea of I want to protect workers' rights. I want to protect the safety of American workers. If they didn't care about it, they would go work for management and they would make more 100%. Money for it.
And understand, they've been working, a lot of these folks have been working, I mean, at this point, you know, as far back as probably the Clinton administration, but they probably have worked, but you have a lot of people who've worked under George W. Bush, who worked under Barack Obama, who worked under Trump the first time, work under Biden. They're career professionals. They have done all of their experience and their schooling in a specific arena. Maybe it's labor law, maybe it's, environmental studies. And they have both knowledge of their field and institutional knowledge as to how things work. You take those people out, and these agencies become ineffective. And then it's basically off to the races for these corporate interests. And so you'll see I can guarantee you the amount of times that Elon Musk spoke or talked about in depth, or frankly, any Republicans. In fact, to the extent that you can find any Republicans who were talking about USAID, they were largely supportive.
Right.
Both in its charitable work and, frankly, there's a lot of work that is sort of like projects American soft power. So the sort of like State Department end of American imperialism. Some people have more or less of a problem with that, but the dollars that we're talking about are not significant in the context of the U.S. budget, and certainly the stuff that helps develop other countries is not. I mean, I was watching Joe Rogan the other day. He's talking about, look how ridiculous this is. We're spending money on Afghan schools. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we invaded Afghanistan, and the idea was we weren't going to leave it a complete mess because that's what breeds international terrorism. Now the idea that we're trying to build schools is problematic. It's all smokescreen.
Well, and the USAID thing, it's interesting because we just had on Jeff Shirky, a labor historian, to talk about labor's connections to USAID and some of the nefarious things that the AFL-CIO has done in coordination with USAID and the CIA and the State Department abroad, including, like in Chile and the dirty wars in Latin and Central South America in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And yet I oppose what's going on with Elon Musk and USAID. And so for some people that don't think too much about that, you might get a little bit of whiplash from that. But for one, it is worth saying that USAID does do some good work that should be defended on its
without
merits.
a doubt.
But even setting that aside, if we want to actually talk about what is the U.S. government doing nefariously overseas, let's actually have a transparent process of evaluating and auditing this kind of stuff. Let's create a church committee within the Congress, like how we uncovered some of the other stuff that the CIA was doing before. And let's do something like that and actually have an open process instead of the executive branch illegally going in and impounding obligations that the Congress has allocated and doing it in this kind of semi-transparent sort of a smokescreen process where you can see some of the stuff on Twitter, but there's no hearings or there's no opportunity for the people and the programs to defend themselves. You don't hear the other side. You just see what's on Elon Musk's Twitter account. This is all, for one, it's illegal. It's a violation of separation of powers, obviously, but it is also not a serious attempt to figure out what we are doing overseas. And Marco Rubio himself said we are going to see a significant increase in the use of private contractors, which, by the way, contractor pay makes up 12% of the federal budget. Total compensation for federal employees make up only 4%. But none of this talk is about, are we going to cut contract employees? Are we going to bring contract employees in-house so we can save money and we can be more efficient instead of having these contractors where the CEOs are making millions of dollars and the employees are underpaid, or even the employees themselves are making more than federal workers? There's no talk about that. It's all aimed at federal workers who, again, total compensation is 4% of the federal budget. And so, church committee, let's do something like that instead of allowing a billionaire to go in.
You don't even need a church committee. You could do this through Foreign Service Committee. I mean, there's plenty of that's the thing. It's total BS. I mean, I don't know how else to say this. I mean, the idea that Marco Rubio is, concerned that the U.S. government is trying to influence elections in some other country through, supporting an independent press or something. I mean, it's all bull. like you say, he's going to bring in contractors. It's going to be more opaque, and they're going to do more nefarious things. I mean, and if the Congress believes that there's a problem with the way that money is being spent at USAID in some of these programs, they bring the head of the agency in, and they investigate it, and that's it. I mean, this is, and most of these programs, incidentally, have been completely transparent, and they'll talk for, weeks. Now it seems like on the U.S. government supporting Politico. These are trade magazines that they're talking about, and there's subscriptions that different agencies get because they're reporting on government. I mean, I'd be more than happy to have government agency that provides this type of information across all of the agencies and provides it for free for the public. I mean, there's only two ways you're going to get it. One is if the government does it and provides it as a service for the government itself and for the public, or if you're going to you're basically outsourcing contractors, in this case, Politico Pro or whatever, Government Exec Pro, or there's a bunch of these trade magazines. And I'm aware of this. I've been looking into it because I knew the story was going to be in the agencies with this administration, and it's expensive to get reporters on this because there's just not a wide audience generally, and so much of what we're hearing is absolute BS, and people are buying it because Elon Musk is has been lionized, and so much in so many people in the tech press have basically been reporting on this guy as a way of, it's like entertainment reporters. Half of them want to work in the entertainment industry, and they know one of the routes into that is reporting on these people and doing so in a very uncritical way. It just so happens that in the tech world, it's a lot more dangerous for the rest of us.
Exactly. Exactly. And also, another thing that's problematic about what's going on here is the idea that it's not only just unaccountable billionaires violating the law and the separation of powers and all of this and illegally impounding, congressional allocations and things like this. It's also racist 19-year-olds, right? At which people are pretending to believe that the argument is we have to ruin some kid's life for inappropriate tweets or whatever. And that's a very mild phrasing, saying normalize Indian hate, saying I was racist before it was cool. Things like this, are a little bit more than inappropriate tweets. But we can both hold in our heads, this guy shouldn't have his whole entire life ruined and be destitute and homeless for the rest of his life, while also saying he should not have a top position at the head of the largest employer on the globe. And it's not even hard to say that. Like, there are so many other jobs other than at the head of the United States government that it's so silly that people like J.D. Vance are pretending there's no way that they believe that is what people are saying, right?
No, I mean, look, there's a couple of things going on here. One is, I think they all should be fired. They shouldn't have any access to what they're doing right now. What they're doing is patently illegal. And, but secondly, this isn't a situation where a 40-year-old, we found tweets of his or hers from 15 or 20 years ago when they were a kid. The guy tweeted this stuff last month.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, I mean,
has he grown?
The idea that we're punishing him for past, youthful indiscretions. Well, the theory behind that is somebody grew up and understood, like, hey, this type of bigotry is wrong, and I don't do it anymore. There's no indication the guy has any, what, I was on a bender a month ago? I mean, honestly, what are we talking about here? And so as far as I'm concerned, I don't give a rat's ass about this guy one way or another. None of these people are doing anything that's even remotely legal right now. The question is that, who has standing to bring this to the courts, and will the Trump administration listen to the courts? Beyond that, listen, there is part of what the Trump campaign was about was changing our culture in such a way where bigotry is more tolerated. That's basically one of their agendas. They want to be able to use the R word, like that clip from that a-hole you played up front. They want to be able to say things like, normalize Indian hate, or, your body, my choice. That's what their agenda was. And they won.
Yeah.
And people can decide, for themselves if that's the kind of society they want to live in. But I'm not going to feel any sympathy for this kid. The kid has no right to be doing whatever he's doing. And he's not a kid. If he's a kid, why are we letting him into the control, essentially the control system for $6 trillion worth of U.S. government payments? And if he's not a kid, then he should take responsibility for himself like an adult. I mean, you can't have it both ways here. And so I think the guy should be fired because what he's doing is illegal. I personally would never hire someone like that, because if I have other workers, I don't want to subject those other workers to this type of bigotry in the workplace.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the question of standing. You mentioned the question of standing earlier, and I talked about in Last Week in Southern Labor how there was a lawsuit by some unions to keep these people from having access to the Department of Labor's data, and the judge agreed that the defendants, the unions, had presented some valid concerns, and he shares those concerns, but unfortunately they did not establish standing. And it's just so kind of bizarre to me, the idea, like, well, who the heck has standing to protect workers' privacy data as workers, right? I mean, the Department of Labor, this is their data as workers. Who has the standing to protect workers' data as workers, if not organizations of working people formed explicitly for the protection and mutual aid and support of work? I mean, it's just the most bizarre.
Right, and it's catch-22 because you don't know if you're an individual worker whose information has been compromised, and you won't know that until too late. We are, if not we are at the cusp of a genuine constitutional crisis here, because we don't have mechanisms for this type of lawlessness by an administration functioning within our own government. We just don't have the institutional experience and the systems to deal with this. And so it's going to be, we're going to have trouble going through the courts. Trump got 270 lifetime appointees when he was there. So many of those judges are there because of their willingness to show fealty to Donald Trump. They have come up through the Federalist system, which is a right-wing, the Federalist Society, which is a right-wing sort of like incubator for right-wing judges. And they believe that the U.S. government should not function to protect workers, should not function to protect citizens, should not function to protect consumers, should not function but to smooth the way for corporations to basically do what they want. I mean, that is, more or less their doctrine. They believe in something they call freedom of contract. They don't believe in the existence of unions. They don't believe in the right for people to unionize. And they are now implementing their agendas, and they're getting the opportunity to do it. And so, like I think you mentioned it in the last hour, so much of what Trump and Musk and Russell Vogt. People should remember that name because he's going to be the head of the Office of Budget and Management. And he's the one who wrote the chapter in Project 2025 about demoralizing the federal workforce. Literally said, I want to traumatize these people. I want them to be afraid to come into work every day. Because he doesn't want these people to show up and do their jobs. And their jobs is to inhibit corporate power to the extent that, like, you know, the lobbyists in Congress will allow them to do it, or the courts for that matter. And this is, you know, we are in a very precarious moment because it is unclear. You know, so many of the things that the Trump administration is doing is to get to the courts and allow some of these right-wing judges and, frankly, justices on the Supreme Court to say, yeah, the National Labor Relations Board, that should not exist. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that should not exist. The SEC should not have the ability to regulate cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they're doing. They are trying, this is a 2 or 3 step process. And if it doesn't get to the courts, how do you stop them?
Right.
You know, he's put in an attorney general who was looking into Trump University, I don't know, 10 years ago. And he paid her $25,000 for a campaign, and then investigation over. She's been working as basically a foreign lobbyist. His U.S. attorney in D.C., he may not even be licensed there. He was representing a defendant, January 26th defendant, who had been violent towards the cops. He becomes the D.C. attorney, U.S. attorney, and basically drops the charges. I mean, this is a rigged game that we're watching. And, you know, the important thing is right now, I don't want to sound too bleak, but I'm feeling pretty bleak about it. The important thing that people should be doing right now is organizing in one fashion or another. Labor is a great place to do that. Your union, or not even if it's not an official union, because, you know, the system that we have to essentially unionize legally under the federal government is under incredible assault, literally as we speak. Right. And so people are going to just have to organize largely outside of a legal framework. It's not to be, I'm not saying criminal gangs, but I'm saying you're not going to get the legal protections that you would have 4 months ago.
Right.
Your employer is you know, doing an unfair labor practice. There's nowhere to go now. They've destroyed the board.
Yeah, it's pretty bleak. And you know, you said like not like criminal gangs, but I mean that's how unions were originally classified in this country. Was literally, you know, criminal gangs. And so you know, we'll see. Hopefully they're not successful in their attempt to completely dismantle the American regime of labor relations, but you know, we'll be talking to folks about the labor relations before the NLRB, I'm sure, over the coming weeks and months. Changing subject, but not, you know, within the kind of the same realm. You know, you're one of your kind of longest running bits on the show on the Majority Report has been how much of a fan you are of Social Security and the Postal Service. And I say a bit as just like a recurring theme. Like, it's not like you actually, presumably you really are very passionate about the Social Security and the Postal Service. So let's talk about Social Security first, because that has also been in the crosshairs of DOGE, despite, you know, during election time and it's people always pretend that Social Security is not in the crosshairs of Republicans. DOGE is, exactly as you said, a Republican project. It is Republicanism, and Trump is a Republican. These are not kind of distinct types of people or ideologies or movements. It's all one and the same. And, one of my frustrations is the pretending that Social Security is not in the crosshairs of these people. But one of the members of the Doge caucus in Congress has explicitly called for cuts to Social Security. You played a clip of, I think Alex Lawson is his name, from Social Security Works on your program, interviewing one of these folks. And so explain to people why Social Security specifically is such like I'm not sure what the word is, but a big goal, like kind of the light at the end of the tunnel for the project of republicanism and libertarianism. Why is it such a big goal for these kinds of folks? And decode what they mean when they say things like raising the retirement age,
right,
and these other types of stuff.
Well, why it's such a target is easy. I can explain it in basically two phrases. One is, why do people rob banks? Because that's where the money is. A. And B, the other reason why Republicans have been against Social Security literally since its inception in 1936 is because it is so effective. And in keeping as a social insurance, in keeping our elderly out of poverty. And the reason why they have an issue with that, I think, is because it shows the potential for government in terms of supporting people. The reason why Social Security, I think, for me, has become, has been such a major theme on my show is this is the 21st year I've been doing this type of work. And in 2005, George Bush wanted to privatize Social Security. And that was about a year into my career doing radio at the time. And, I was 38 years old and I hadn't really given a single thought to Social Security at all, because you don't when you're young. And, I spent a lot of time learning about it as a way to push back on the privatization of it. It is perhaps the single most effective program that we have in this country. Like I say, it keeps about 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. It is a social insurance program. It is mean tested in the sense that we tax. In your retirement, you get taxed if your income is, past certain thresholds. So you pay into Social Security system. You don't know if at age 65, or now it's going to be 67 for you, for me, and for you, because they have raised the retirement age as part of a deal in 1983 with Ronald Reagan and Alan Greenspan. Did a commission. They knew that the boomer generation was gonna put more pressure on the Social Security system. So the full retirement age will be 67 for someone my age, and I'm only, I'm 58, so it's only 8-9 years away from me. The Social Security system, like I say, keeps people out of poverty, and it also, what it does is, if your parents are 65 or 67, it keeps you from having to pay for them to be out of poverty. So you don't have to work for multiple generations of your family. You can work for, your kids or your future. You don't have to worry that your parents are forced to eat cat food. And it is, aside from, it constitutes about 1/3 of what the U.S. government does in terms, and it is, our payroll taxes go directly towards Social Security. The trust fund, which was basically like an extra to deal with the boomers, is going to run out 2033. That's an estimate. Could run out, probably will run out a little bit later, but let's just call it 2033. After that, it will be 75% or 78% will be paid out. They could easily fix this by raising the cap on which we get taxed. So in other words, right now, if you make $176,000, your employer pays 6.2%, and you pay 6.2% of that into Social Security and Medicare. If you make over $176,000, let's say you make $1 million a year, you still only pay 6.2% on $176,000.
Right.
So if you make $3 million a year in wages, you still pay 6.2% on $176,000. So the percentage of what you pay of your income drops once you get above $176,000. They could get rid of that cap. And it's insurance. You know, it's unlikely if you're making $1 million a year as a 45-year-old that you're going to need Social Security when you're older. But if you happen to put it all into crypto and crypto crashes when you're 67, you will be protected. You will live on Social Security. If not, then you'll get taxed on that Social Security. Now, Trump wants to get rid of the tax on Social Security, and people think, oh, that's a great idea. It's only helping rich people. It's only helping rich people.
Right.
Because the only people who get taxed on their Social Security are people who in retirement are making that much more money that they worry about getting taxed.
Right.
If you don't get taxed on your overtime, you don't get that credit in your Social Security down the road. And Social Security doesn't pay you necessarily. I mean, you get back more money than you put into Social Security. Does it give you the same returns as the stock market? It depends. Because I know a lot of people who turned 65 in 2008 and they were screwed. And you don't know when the stock market drops like that or crashes. Mm-hmm. You don't know, is it going to come back in a week? Is it going to come back in a month? Is it going to come back in a year? May take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. Wait a second, then I'm 70. So Social Security is a social insurance program. And if you don't need it, that means you're rich and you're fine. It's like complaining. I bought fire insurance for my house. 30 years later, I'm pissed off because I never had to use it.
Right.
Well, your house is protected. I mean, that's what it is. It's protecting your retirement. They're going to come after it, and they're going to say, we're not going to touch it for seniors. Mm-hmm. They're not going to touch it for people my age. They're only going to touch it for people your age.
Right.
And they're going to say your age, and you're in your 20s, your 30s, and you're like, I don't have to worry about that. It is, every year they raise it, it is a 7% cut. And they're going to raise it in such a way that they're going to actually add cuts to it. And the reason why they want this is because the U.S. government 20 years ago borrowed much of our borrowing is from the Social Security trust fund. And if they don't have to pay it back, if the general budget doesn't have to pay it back because we've cut benefits for people, then they can spend more on tax cuts for rich people. That's why they have always wanted to cut Social Security.
I'm glad you mentioned that about the raising the retirement age, because that sounds a lot less bad than just an across-the-board cut, because we don't have a retirement age. We have like 70 retirement ages, and you can retire as early as 62 and receive Social Security payments, and like, I don't know, as late as what some higher age, but the amount that you can withdraw at each age is different. And so when they say raising the retirement age, it's just an across the board cut at all, however many different retirement ages, 69 and 13 months, or 69 and 12 months, or 70, 71 and 3 months, all of these, it's an across the board cut when they say raising the retirement age. And another thing that you mentioned on the show that I didn't realize before.
And ask a 65-year-old who has been, working as a super or doing construction or, working as a server in a restaurant. What do you care about that year?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. Right.
It makes a big, it's hard to project out when you're in your 20s and your 30s, even in your 40s, like this is going to make a difference to me. But when you get older, and if you've been working a job that's been demanding, and the people talk about, we've had people have living longer. People are living longer in the upper 50 percentile of the income distribution, but not in the lower 50 percentile.
Right.
People talk about, we don't have as many workers to support Social Security as we used to. That's true. In 1970, we had 3.5 workers for every one retiree. Now we have 2.51, but we're just much more productive. So there's plenty of money to support workers. But, it's hard when you're younger not to think like, well, they keep saying Social Security is not going to be there and it's unfunded. Let me tell you what else is unfunded 20 years out in everything.
Exactly.
In fact,
everything is unfunded as of March.
As of March, the only things that are funded is Social Security and Medicare because they're a self-supporting system. Everything else is broke in March.
The entire government
Congress
is bankrupt.
decides to appropriate money for it and change the law. I mean, that's basically it. And like our people don't understand the basic functioning of government because in a large part, I think, that ignorance is helpful for people.
You also mention on your show a lot of times when you talk about Social Security that because of the income cap, it's been kind of relatively steady over the years. And so because it's been steady back in the last century and in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, even though it had that cap, the Social Security tax caught like 98% of the income in the United States or something. And now it only catches like 80-something%. And
yeah,
so
let me fix your numbers there. But
okay, yeah.
The real issue is it's back in 83, 91% of wages were happened under the cap. 91% of money earned happened under the cap at that time. I don't remember what the cap was, but roughly equivalent to 176 in 1983 dollars. We have so much wealth disparity now that only 86%, 85% of wealth that is generated is underneath that cap. You've got rich people hoarding money.
Right.
And it's just, if, let's put it this way. If I make $300,000 and you make $20,000, your $20,000 is all going to be taxed, and $176,000 of my dollars are going to be taxed, and I'm going to have another $130,000 that's not taxed. But if you make $176,000 and I make $176,000, the entirety of that $340,000 is going to be taxed. And our system is much better off when we don't have that wealth disparity. But we do have that wealth disparity, and that's what we're seeing here. So we need to blow off the cap so that the super wealthy people in this country are paying more into Social Security so that we don't have, like we had pre-Social Security, where there were 25,000 people living on the street on the Bowery in New York City, literally living on the street.
Right.
When I was a kid, I used to watch this show called The Bowery Boys. I didn't understand what it was about, but it was basically about a time where pre-Social Security, we had tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Americans who were living in abject poverty as senior citizens in this country.
Right. And as we're winding down, I wanted to talk about the Postal Service. We have been covering the NALC and the Postal Service contract negotiations relatively closely, and we've gotten a lot of letter carriers in the audience recently, and so we have I know we have several letter carriers that are going to be listening now, and the Postal Service is like Social Security, kind of one of your bailiwicks, one of the things that you're really passionate about, that you really like. So why do you like the Postal Service so much? What is it about that kind of gets you excited?
Postal Service is magic, right? I mean, it's like magic. Yeah. Stamp costs now, I think, closer to 80 cents for a letter.
73 cents.
Okay, I get forever stamps. I buy a bunch of those, so I haven't bought stamps in a while. But you put this on a letter, it doesn't matter where you're sending it in this country. The most remote region of this country, that letter will get there.
Yep.
It is incredibly efficient when we have people who want it to working there, who are not put in to basically privatize it. And if you live in a remote rural area of this, I mean, first of all, the post office was basically what bound this country together as a country. It allowed for the country to communicate with each other. We don't need it in the same way that we needed it at the time, but still, the ability for you to live in a rural town in Wyoming or Iowa or Nebraska or Arkansas and get a letter to me in New York City in a couple of days for 80 cents or send me a package without having to pay 40, 50, 60 bucks, even if it's an envelope through FedEx or DHL or UPS, is magic. And even those companies ride on the infrastructure of the post office. And we've had at times, it was back in the 60s, where we had postal banking, where you could go to the post office and get basic banking done. And we have this apparatus already set up. We have the branches. We have the coordination. We are underutilizing the post office because, again, right-wing forces in this country for the last 50 years have been targeting examples of the federal government doing things that work for the American public. It has been a long-term project, and they have been pretty successful in demonizing these places. People tell me, you go to the DMV. There are some cities where you go to the DMV, it's tough because there's a lot of people there. But broadly speaking, go to your cable company and see what that's like. It's far worse. Try and call your private insurance company and get them to deal with a claim. It is far worse. I mean, this is the idea that the post office doesn't function amazingly well, I think is absurd. And to the extent that we've had problems with it, it has largely been a project of Donald Trump's Postmaster General to essentially privatize a significant portion of the post office so that, and this is a term from when we were talking about the privatization of Social Security. These outfits want this so-called dumb money, which is money, taxpayer money, that they can go in and they know that the people who are paying attention to this money, their agenda is to throw it out the door to private contractors. And, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at people who fundamentally do not like government. And when you put them in charge of government, they're going to set out to make it bad. So the first attack we're going to see on Social Security is not going to be cutting benefits. The first attack we're going to see is going to be on the Social Security Administration.
Exactly.
So that your Social Security payments get screwed up. And then you're like, I don't like Social Security because my payments get screwed up. But they're going in there doing that. Musk fired all the people who designed the free e-file for IRS. And I promise you, the system that worked so well on the e-file in a pilot program last year, this year, as it's rolled out to everybody, is going to be full of bugs by design so that people want to get rid of it. And I guarantee you within 2 years, that system, which saved your average American a couple of $100 on filing their taxes and made it much more simple for them, is going to go away because people are going to be like, it doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, it's sabotage. It's sabotage.
100%
sabotage. They go in and
100%
exactly
sabotage.
like you said. They want to, where government is working well, like the post office. They want to go in and cut it up to make it worse, to feed into their talking points, so that they can come back and say, "Oh, look, isn't government so bad?" Sam, we've kept you on for a while, a little bit longer than we originally said. So really appreciate your time. Always enjoy talking to you. The last question that I have for you is, we're a union radio program. I'm a union member. I'm president of the AFL-CIO Council in North Alabama. My co-host is a union member, the chair of our political committee for our labor council. So we're really involved. Obviously, we don't speak for the labor movement as a whole. But if you had a question, if you could pose a question to the labor movement writ large, what would your question be to us?
Well, I will. First, I say SAG-AFTRA member, 30-year.
Wow.
32-year member of both SAG and AFTRA, and former WGA member. I haven't written a script in too long to still be a member, but I'm vested. I basically am. I guess my question for the labor movement is, how quickly can May of 2028 get here? I'm looking for the labor movement to figure out a way to step outside of the constraints of Taft-Hartley and organize in a way that is focused on using the power of withholding labor. The administrative state can definitely help, but it's not going to be a help for the labor movement for some time. And so I'm looking for, what they're willing to do. But this is really a question of individual workers have to, come to the realization that their power is a function of being in solidarity with other workers. And one person alone, it's not enough for them to withhold their labor. They need to do it. They need the protection and the power that comes with being organized. And so, I hope labor leadership realizes this is a make or break moment, because
yeah, us too. And that
the agenda is clear.
Yeah, exactly. In May of 2028, that's definitely something that we're tracking. Our labor council has endorsed a resolution that several other labor councils across the country and some state AFL-CIO federations have endorsed, endorsing the UAW's call to align contracts for May 2028. We passed that at our labor council unanimously. It was pretty exciting, and there was another one in Alabama that has. So hopefully, we're going to see more labor federations across the country adopting stuff like that and begin planning for May of 2028, because it'll be here before we know it, and it's really important So Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Really enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll be able to get you back on before too long.
And hope you feel better.
Hope you feel better.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Jacob, always a pleasure. I really appreciate what you guys do. I'm so glad you're out here. I'm so happy you're on multiple radio stations. I've watched you grow this thing over the past, I don't know, was it like 5 or 6 years, maybe more now?
Yeah, we started in May of 2020. Isn't that a terrible time to start a new project?
Well, I'll tell you, you guys have done a lot in a brief amount of time, relative to this business. And so, I really appreciate the work you're doing, and I hope people tell other people about your show. It's important to spread it around.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Sam Seder,
So
host
long.
of the Majority Report. We'll have him back on soon. We're going to take a break really quick, and we're going to be right back to wrap up the first half of the show. Stay tuned. The Laborers International Union of North America, LIUNA Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at iamaw44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest largest union talk radio program in the southern United States. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morris, and my co-host is Adam Keller. If you have anything to add, you can give us a call. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. We'll go ahead and open the lines now, and we'll begin taking calls at 11 here at the top of the second half of the show. If anybody wants to call in, 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. Boss Watch is a segment that we try to do every single week where we take a look at what bosses were up to in the southern United States. We have been saying that there has been a pause on enforcement actions from the Trump administration. That remains true today. There is no new press releases or enforcement actions or resolutions of ongoing enforcement actions from the Department of Labor, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or the Mine Safety and Health Administration, or any of the other federal agencies that we regularly check. But we do have a news story from a previous recipient of an enforcement action. You will remember literally a week ago, we talked about how, or a little over a week ago, and this was covered from in our Boss Watch from January 17th to the 24th, that an Alabama company was fined almost $200,000 for the death of a worker because of the employer's lax safety standards. That fine literally came just a couple of weeks ago. That same company saw an employee be sent to the hospital because he was hit by a forklift on Thursday, 2 days ago. So this is a GE appliance manufacturing company, Hayer Appliances, in Decatur, Alabama. An employee was sent to the hospital for injuries related to a forklift accident. Non-fatal, thankfully. But it is amazing that they are not, that management there is not on high alert after getting a fine like that. But we're in a new administration, and it's unclear if that incident will even be investigated, much less a fine issued if there are actual safety concerns. It is a really, really bleak time for worker protections. We have our sponsored segment, Union Busters. This segment of Boss Watch, covering national updates, is sponsored by Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that Union Busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new LM20s that were filed last week. LRI Consulting Services was hired by Jacinta Port International for $425 an hour, and Santana International was subcontracted and made $212.50 an hour. Road Warrior Productions was hired by Titan, Florida for $3,800 per day. You will note from last week in Southern Labor that the workers there won their union election with the Teamsters. Very excited that that expensive union busting did not pay off for the corporation. ICWE and the Crossroads Group were hired by Unity Point Health for $400 an hour and $450 an hour, respectively. This LM20 was amended. Government Resources Consultants of America amended their LM20 with Paragon to add subcontractors. In addition, we wanted to highlight some persuader activity at Laboratory Corporation of America in Portland, Oregon. There's been a lot of shady stuff going on there, according to Labor Lab. We have a verified report that 3 persuaders are on site. We know that one is Emma Medina, and there are reports that the Union Busters are using fake names as well. So, not good stuff there. Not good stuff. Hopefully the workers are able to not pay attention to some of that high-paid union busting. And finally, in this segment, due to a lack of enforcement, some labor relations consultants may disregard the law and fail to report their activities to the U.S. Department of Labor. Therefore, it's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Labor Management Standards. So if you see any suspected activity, make sure that you report it, because again, they might not do that. For assistance with that, you can contact Labor Lab at contact@laborlab.us. Adam, what are your plugs for the rest of the week?
As always, check out labornotes.org/events. I know they have a stewards workshop coming up later this month. Want to encourage people to check that out. Reminding folks that we are part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network. So if you're interested in finding more shows related to labor, you can check that out as well. We'll be talking in the next half about the Alabama legislative session. It did start this week, so I really encourage all you Alabama folks, all my brothers and sisters living down here, to be involved, be engaged, pay attention to what's happening, get linked up with organizations that are active in Montgomery in the State House and are trying to make things better for working folks. So we'll be talking more about that in the second half of the program. Really appreciate everyone tuning in today. Stick around. We have a great lineup in the overtime. We have a couple great guests coming. And of course, more news. There's so much news to talk about. It's very tough right now for us to figure out what do we focus on, because unfortunately, working class folks are taking so many hits from so many directions right now. And now we factor in the state legislative sessions going on. So we've got to keep our eyes on Montgomery as well. So a lot going on. We appreciate all the support. Everyone who's been tuning in today. Appreciate the YouTube chat as always. Stay engaged with us and stay subscribed if you haven't already.
Yep. That's going to be it for us this week, folks. Really appreciate your time. Hope you stay with us for the second half of the program. We're going to continue broadcasting online at the Valley Labor Report. If you don't stay for that, then we'll see you next week. All right, folks. We are off the radio now. Like I said, appreciate everybody staying tuned. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number. 844-899-8857. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Overtime.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley in the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host here is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us. If you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We have a caller on the line. This caller is from a 256 area code. Caller from a 256 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Woodall. I'm from Eva, Alabama. I called years ago. I was Stacey George's press secretary for running for governor against Kay Ivey.
Yeah.
I don't know if you. Yeah.
Yes.
And
no.
what
Yeah.
I'm calling about is.
Yeah, I remember that. Appreciate you calling back. What's on your mind?
Yeah. You guys gave me a voice. Then I really appreciate it too. What I'm calling about now, though, is we participated in 2019 in a documentary. And that documentary is going to have things to do with the Alabama labor force, and that it's called the Alabama Solution. And it's I rode with them one day, and we were down at the Department of Corrections, me and Stacy, and they filmed all that. But they went into the prisons, and they have cell phone footage from the prisons, and it aired at the Sundance Film Festival about a week and a half ago to 94% high margin there. Okay. And it's going to be released, a theatrical release, and then on HBO thereafter. And they say it's very gripping, and that it really gets into the usage of prisoners to their detriment as a part of the workforce and to the workforce's detriment. So I was wanting to, you guys are so good at what you do, and this past show just now was really good. I actually give you a lot of praises on my Quora of how good you guys do, and I just wanted everybody to be aware of that. Maybe go see it or read about it. It's Andrew Durecki and Charlotte Kaufman are the directors. They're known from that movie, the documentary type thing, The Jinx, and just thought that might be something of interest to your listeners.
Yes, absolutely. Remind us the name of the documentary one more time.
It's called the Alabama Solution. When the federal judge told Governor Ivey what she needed to do about the situation being so dire in the prisons, she said she'd take care of it the Alabama way. There would be an Alabama solution. The federal judge never said build prisons. He just said to take care of things that were happening with the persons being harmed. My whole big thing about this, guys, was Governor Riley shut down the mental hospitals where people were bedridden, doctors ordered to be there without telling the families when they were letting them out, put them on the streets. They went in their mental state to the jails in Alabama, and eventually after 3 times of having nowhere to, unable to get a job because mentally they were incapable of it, 600 and something of them went into the prison system where for their own not being harmed in terrible ways by the other persons that were there, they put them in isolation, some of them for over 2 years, never seeing a person, with the inmates just either giving them food or not, with a very, very low amount of guards, y'all. So it was very horrendous. I did get some changes made where they will go in now, and they do go see them now twice a month, mental health does. But I didn't mean to stay on so long, but I just thought y'all would want to know it and know
is that on YouTube?
No, it's coming on HBO.
Coming on HBO. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So
yes, it will. It will be a theatrical release in movie theaters, and then it will be thereafter. It will be on HBO. It was filmed to be an HBO documentary, and I'm in it. When you go to the Montgomery side, I'll be the guy with the blonde hair and the white shirt there, behind Stacy. But
there you go.
I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody listening, and keep up the good work, guys.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, appreciate the call.
Sounds like you need to keep up the good work too.
Yeah, absolutely. And appreciate you lifting up that documentary. I just caught news of that, I guess over the past week, and very, very timely and relevant to what we're what we're talking about here in the Alabama legislative session. So,
speaking of, you brought up Kay Ivey. Let's react to her State of the State address. Last week was the beginning of Alabama's legislative session, and Kay Ivey kicked it off with an address to the state, talking about the state of the state. So let's play this clip that kind of gives you an idea of her tenor and some of the things she was trying to push for during her address.
From our capital city to Mobile, and yes, all the way to the Gulf of America. To the Gulf of America, we live in the greatest state, in the greatest nation on earth. You can call us a football state, and we might just become a basketball state. You say we are not innovative, and we will rightfully earn Space Command headquarters. And you say we are stuck at the bottom in education, and our students will show you the highest gains in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of our state is strong, and opportunity
Okay, she didn't actually cough all that much all at once, but those are all separate coughs that I pulled together. Isn't that's a lot of coughs? She doesn't sound well. But so obviously and they were also very juicy coughs, especially that last one. But so, look, her the overall tenor of the address was like, it's morning in America kind of thing. And just, talking about the tone of that, there are things in Alabama to be excited about and some progress that has been made recently that is genuinely true. But just as an overall point, it is interesting to me that Republicans can talk so positively about the state of the state. All of this is like retrospectively, while at the same time, literally the same people will attack Democrats when Democrats try to talk about some of the legitimately good things that the Biden administration did, right? Like we can say, and I think that I am convinced, and Adam, I wonder if you're convinced, that the Literacy and the Numeracy Act seem like they have been good for Alabama students. I mean, that it just, and I can say that. And I'm open to being persuaded otherwise, but I can say that and recognize that was a kind of a Republican thing, and it's fine that it seems like it's worked. And I can also say that it is true that there were more manufacturing jobs under Biden than there ever were under Trump, that the unemployment rate reached lower levels under Biden than it ever did under Trump, that the labor force participation rate reached higher levels than it ever did under Trump, which is not to say that there were not systemic problems across the country under the Biden administration. Obviously there were, and we were critical of them, and we were talking about them the whole time, just like we were talking about the problems in Alabama specifically. But anytime somebody points to a discrete good thing that a Democrat has done, you're called like out of touch and elite, and you don't understand the plights that normal working people have. But a Republican can get up and talk retrospectively about what was still Biden's America until 2 weeks ago, right? She's talking about all this progress that was made under Biden's America when everything was so bad, and yet there is zero talk about, not even from the Democrats, and we'll get to that here in a second, but there's no talk about Kay Ivey doesn't understand the plight of working Alabamians. And it's just like, that's kind of an interesting that is an interesting divergence that I noticed. But, you know, she pointed to, you know, the interest in Alabama getting the Space Command back, the fourth grade reading scores, which, you know, were impressive. The fourth grade reading and math scores went from like 48th and 49th to like 35th and 32nd, which is where from the bottom of the pack to like the lower middle of the pack. And so that is legitimately like, you know, a bright spot, right? It is worth noting though that we climbed the rankings only because Alabama has completely recovered from the learning gap that we faced during COVID, right? And so now in 2024, students for the first time tested as well as they did in 2019, but it's not higher. It's just that the rest of the country has fallen even further behind, and the rest of the country on average is still at a higher place than the state of Alabama is, at least with reference to fourth grade. But, you know, I mean, look, we can celebrate that. Like, there's no problem with celebrating that, right? But you would not know that from her speech, what I just told you. Also, she touted 18,000 applicants for private schools with this new school choice program, which is kind of discordant from the message that she was just saying about how great our schools are. And yet you are proud of the fact that there are 18,000 students and 18,000 families that are trying to leave the state schools. That seems strange. She talked about banning cell phones in schools, banning Glock switches. I thought that was interesting. She also pushed maternity leave for state employees and teachers, which we're really excited about. She talked about the 10 Commandments, male and female in state law, blah, blah, blah. She talked about enhanced legal protections for cops. That's crazy. But, you know, you would not hear things about how our infant mortality and our maternal mortality is still some of the highest in the nation. You wouldn't hear that we have the highest one of the highest incarceration rates in the country, with one of the highest incarceration rates in the history of the world. You wouldn't hear any of that other stuff, and you wouldn't hear any of the long-standing systemic problems with our economy, the lack of rights that workers and citizens have in this state. And so you would think that the opposition party would have a strong message about filling in those gaps and attacking the Republicans and going on the offense, putting forward a really good, positive vision for the state. And so here is the Alabama Democrats' official response to the state of the state from Ontario Tillman. Here is how he opened it.
Thank you for joining me this evening. I am Representative Ontario Tillman from Alabama House District 56. We often think about freedom as being free from something, but freedom also means the freedom to do something, like being free to achieve your individual dreams and goals without undue hindrance or restraint. That beautiful ideal of freedom is what has brought us together as a nation and as a state. Freedom, as envisioned by President Franklin D. Roosevelt when he famously spoke of the vital and sacred importance of freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, which are indispensable American values and ideals. To enjoy the freedom from want, as President Roosevelt once defined, we must support building an economic environment that benefits hard-working Alabamians like you. That means promoting job growth, raising wages, and increasing investment in child care, transportation, apprenticeships, career training, and housing for you, for your family, and your community. We strongly believe in empowering new businesses to succeed by increasing access to capital and creating a pro-growth and profitable business environment that fosters innovation and entrepreneurship. Finally, workplace safety must always be a top priority for every employer and employee. Increasing economic opportunity is paramount, but as the saying goes, what good is wealth without health? To march forward for freedom, we must be healthy, and it is why we strongly believe that every Alabamian deserves access to quality, affordable health care. That means we must close the coverage gap, eliminate health care deserts, prevent more Alabama hospitals from closing, and invest in emergency services.
So there we go. And it looks like I was muted during the interlude between those two clips, and all I was doing there was just mocking his delivery. So it's not super important. But it was a very strange delivery, very stilted, strange for a politician. But, you know, and so there's some good things there, but, you know, he talked about job growth, talked about raising wages. He even mentioned FDR's 4 freedoms, which is like a super, super exciting thing to me. But all of the things that he mentioned were kind of, there was nothing, no big eye-catching proposal to differentiate them from the Republicans in a big way for working Alabamians. And so, you know, and even to the extent that there are, like, you know, really cool things that they were talking about, there's no mention of, like, why don't we have those things? Why is marijuana not legal? Why do we, I mean, he did mention I don't even know if he mentioned the Republicans when he talked about the abortion ban. But why don't we have strong workplace safety laws in Alabama? Why are poor people, why do they not have health care? Why do we have low wages in the state of Alabama? Why do teachers have low wages in the state of Alabama? Why do we have such low investment in childcare and housing? Who is the enemy? Is it Republicans? Is it billionaires? Nobody knows, and they don't tell us. So, you know, like, I don't know. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating that that is the response from the opposition party in the state of Alabama. There's no big and bold thing to latch onto. There's no negative partisanship there. It's just, you know, I don't know. It's like not. It's like I don't think understanding of the moment that we are in. And that's all I had about that. Adam, what are your thoughts on Kay Ivey and Tillman?
Well, I'll just take a step back and just say that with Alabama politics, you talked about kind of why are things like this. And so we have to recognize that Alabama has been dominated by wealthy, powerful interests for most of our existence. And there have been moments in our history where everyday people, black and white, came together and tried to push back against this and try to have more freedom, as he described. And, you know, whether it was the populist era in the late 19th century or during the New Deal, during the Civil Rights Movement, we've had moments where folks have pushed back. But by and large, you know, what happens in Montgomery in the State House is largely shaped by a handful of very powerful entities, wealthy corporations and their owners, and that's who dictates policy in our state by and large. To change that, we need mass engagement from everyday people, right? We need a lot of people getting involved, a lot of people organizing, a lot of people activating other people. That's how we're going to have to shift these things. We need real people power in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. So that said, with, you know, if we zoom back into kind of what has transpired in Alabama politics over the past week, I mean, there's been some good things. And to your point earlier about being willing to acknowledge when there's something positive happening, even if it's, from the opposition party. Expanding parental leave is very important, and I was appreciative that the governor did speak out on that. There's, I think, room for improvement in what she's pushing, but, it's a step in the right direction. But there are a lot of really nasty bills being pushed in the legislature right now, attacking the unemployment system, attacking immigrants, attacking trans folks, attacking, workers in general. And so I think, again, I encourage people to get involved and to be actively engaged with organizations that are active, and be contacting your lawmaker, stay in touch with them. It doesn't take long to reach out to them. It's worth putting into your schedule, every week, check in with your lawmaker, because they do hear from these special interests. Yeah. They don't as often hear from everyday union folks, working class folks, just, rank and file citizens who are constituents in their district. So it's important that you talk to them, and it's important that we be thinking big picture. Yeah, how do we shift this dynamic of power in this state, where power has been concentrated in this, oligarchy for so long. And as a result, the working class people of Alabama experience some of the worst living conditions anywhere in the country, which, by the way, also means some of the worst in the developed world. You mentioned incarceration, infant and maternal mortality. You could go on and on. Our infrastructure is terrible. It's very, very disappointing to paint a rosy picture of life in Alabama when we know we rank at or near the bottom of everything good and at or near the top of everything bad. That is what the situation is. Like, that should be a crisis. We should be concerned. So, there's lots of opportunities, though, I would say, to make progress. There are some positive legislation that's being debated. The North Alabama Area Labor Council just put out a petition yesterday supporting SB 22. This bill would actually strip tax incentives from companies that violate child labor laws. We've seen a really disturbing increase in illegal child labor across the state and across the country, really. And this would actually give us a tool to hold companies more accountable. So that's the kind of legislation I like to see, and I'd like to see more of it. We've got to have, proactive responses. We can't just always be reacting to what attacks are coming, but no, we've got to paint a positive vision of what things could be if we actually made it better for regular folks and poor folks and folks who are on the margins.
Yeah. Do we have Jeremy Brecker in the Zoom? Jeremy Brecker is a historian, documentary filmmaker, activist, author of books on labor and social movements. His work has centered on understanding and nurturing the process he characterizes as common preservation, in which individuals and groups shift from futile and or self-destructive efforts at self-preservation to strategies of collective action to promote their mutual well-being. Jeremy, welcome to the Valley Labor Report.
Hi, great to be with you.
Hey, thank you so much, Jeremy. Sorry we kept you waiting a little bit long. We got riled up about Alabama politics. But, we wanted to bring you on for a couple reasons. For one, you do have a new book out, so that's always a good reason to talk to you. But I also wanted to just start with the Labor Network for Sustainability. I know that's something you've been involved with for some time, and I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what it is and why y'all do what you do.
Well, Labor Network for Sustainability is, first of all, a group that's part of organized labor, works within the labor movement, and its purpose really is to help unions and other working class organizations figure out positive ways that they can be involved with protecting the climate and protecting the environment. We're all told over and over again, we have to choose between good jobs on the one hand and protecting the environment on the other. And that's the opposite of the truth. The truth is that protecting the environment, protecting the climate can be one of the best ways, if not the best way, to create good jobs and to create a more just and fair society while we're at it. Those ideas are the core of what's known as the Green New Deal, which is creating jobs in order to protect the climate and protecting the climate as a means of creating good jobs. And that's the topic of the book that I just came out with called The Green New Deal from Below, which shows that ordinary folks and city and state governments and local communities all over the country are creating their own Green New Deals from below. And that's a big part of what we're about at the Labor Network for Sustainability.
Well, so let's pick up there with the Green New Deal from below. I'm curious, what did you find in the process of writing this book? Give us some hope. I need some hope today. So give us something positive that you uncovered while writing this book and some of these stories of building a greener future with better jobs from below.
Well, I didn't start out knowing that all this was happening, but as I began digging around and finding out what local folks were doing around the country, it was quite amazing. And in the book, I have 100 examples of Green New Deal from below type programs in 40 different states. They're in the red states as well as in the blue states, Republican states as well as Democratic states, in the South as well as in the rest of the country. And I'll tell you the one that I most recently learned about actually after I'd finished writing the book. It didn't make it to the book because I just found out about it recently. In DeKalb County, Georgia, which is a county outside Atlanta with nearly 1 million people, they have their own DeKalb County Green New Deal. It's been going for 3 or 4 years, and they have created a plan for reducing their greenhouse gas climate-destroying emissions to zero over the coming decades. And they have 20 resolutions that have been passed by the county for different aspects of both climate protection and job creation and challenging forms of injustice there in DeKalb County, Georgia. And the county commissioner, who's one of the main people who's been pushing it, said, well, we wanted to see what we could do right here in DeKalb County on our own without anyone else having to pay for it or anyone else telling us what to do. And so we've made a Green New Deal for DeKalb County based on who we are and what we have to work with in our own home place here. Now, let me give you, just to go to an opposite part of the country, the Boston Green New Deal has been going for about 4 years, and I'll just give you it's many, many aspects. It's created a youth jobs program for training young people, often young people who've been in trouble of one kind or another, and from the poorest parts of the city, giving them training in jobs that will help protect the environment and protect the climate. It's created a free food program for 50,000 Boston's school students, and the food is produced by a worker and Black-owned cooperative in one of the poor neighborhoods of Boston. They have created a free transit program for major parts of the city, and they've launched a Boston Green New Deal schools program, which is doing major construction projects to build and refurbish the public grade schools and high schools of Boston, which of course is also something that creates lots and lots of good construction jobs. So there's a couple of examples. They're in very different parts of the country, but they are both examples of people taking this basic idea of the Green New Deal from below, basic idea of meeting our climate catastrophe in ways that help us create good jobs and more economic and social and racial justice, putting those things together in the form of a Green New Deal from below.
Yeah, I really appreciate those examples because I can't help but think about the moment we're in terms of the federal government and the absolute hostility to responding to our climate crisis in any positive, meaningful way. So the idea that local communities and local and state governments are getting involved and making progress is exciting for sure, and hopeful, in the situation. So we had a question in the chat, and I was wondering if you could expand on this a little bit. What makes a job a good job? When we talk about a Green New Deal and making sure that the green energy sector and these climate resilient jobs are actually good jobs, what do we mean by that?
Well, it's a good question. And of course, for every one of us, I'm sure the jobs that some of us would love, others of us would hate. So I don't think there's a universal answer to it. But there certainly are some common traits of good jobs. One is that it pays enough that you can make a decent living out of it. Another is that the job isn't going to make you get sick or kill you, that it's a safe and healthy job. Another is that you're not going to be treated like a slave or a peasant. And that means having the ability to organize with your fellow workers and have a union if you decide that that's what you want to do, and be able to address the conditions that you face and the conditions of your job in a way that has not just a slave who can be told to do anything and abused in any possible way, but means that you have an organized power with your fellow workers to be able to be at the least an equal partner in deciding what your job is like and what's the conditions under which you work and how much you're going to get paid. So I think those are almost universal pieces of what makes a good job. And of course, for every individual, then if it's totally boring, that may be nice because you can just turn off your mind and maybe listen to something on the radio like this program. And for other people, that would be absolutely horrible, and it has to have some kind of variety and opportunity for creativity in it. Those things can vary, but the core elements of any good job is that it provide you enough money for a decent life, and that it be healthy and safe, and that you have the dignity and power of being able to organize with your fellow workers to be able to have a fair share in determining what life on the job and the conditions of work and wages are like through organized unions and worker organization on the job.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we are a union talk radio show. We are union activists ourselves. And I'm really curious what you have discovered in terms of the labor union's engagement with this. Because you started off and you mentioned this, and I'm glad you did, that we've often been presented a false choice in our society that you have to pick between, the economy and good jobs or saving the planet and the climate, right? That we can't do both. And obviously, as your work points out, we can. It's very possible. But we've seen some of those sorts of, contradictions bubble up even inside the labor movement at times. So, what have you seen in terms of the unions being active in making this Green New Deal a reality? And maybe what are you not seeing from the unions?
Well, great question. The book, The Green New Deal from Below, has a whole chapter on union-based Green New Deal from below projects. There are lots of them all over the country. One of my favorite is from the United Mine Workers, which is one of the unions that's been least supportive of climate protection efforts because they're afraid it'll hurt the jobs of coal miners. But it has been deeply involved with a major project in West Virginia to create 300 jobs for a battery plant that will be making batteries for solar energy. And they are working to make those jobs be jobs for unemployed coal miners so that they can, instead of being unemployed, be able to make a decent living for themselves, being part of the transition to a climate-safe economy. But that's just one example. And in fact, in all of the coalitions that are supporting Green New Deal from below initiatives around the country, in virtually all of them, unions are involved and are supporting it. And also, as the Green New Deal from below type projects are developing, unions get to put in their view about what it should include, what it should look like. I've actually got 2 other chapters in the book on what's come to be known as a just transition. And the point of a just transition is, yes, some people may, in fact, be harmed, workers may be harmed, communities may be harmed in a few cases, but important cases by the transition to a climate-safe economy. Many, many more jobs will be created than will be lost in the transition to a climate-safe economy. But every job is important if it's your job. And so the people who are making plans for how to transition to a climate-safe economy have to make sure that they make good provision for people who otherwise might be adversely affected. And that's often referred to as a just transition, and it's happening in all kinds of cases. Just to give you an example, Illinois had just passed a major climate protection law, vast investment in climate-safe energy, closing down on a phased transition basis of coal-fired power plants throughout the state. But as they've done that, in the legislation that requires that, it also includes substantial investment in the communities where those plants are being shut down, often investment in new forms of renewable energy and job production through that, and also widespread support for, in fact, they have a displaced worker Bill of Rights that provides both financial support, retraining, and priority access to new jobs for anyone who's negatively affected by that transition. This was very much a program that was written by the Illinois labor movement and incorporated in that legislation, along with climate and social justice provisions.
Well, that's really positive to hear. Obviously in Alabama, we are a little bit farther away from that, I guess you could say. But I really, that's inspiring to see that there is action happening, all the way up to the state level. Like I said, in the midst of what is, really severe hostility to this from the national level. And so I wanted to kind of round us out by drawing upon some of your work. You wrote the book Strike. You've been studying labor for a long time. And, especially when we talk about environmental justice and really saving our climate from utter catastrophe, but also just the broader future of our labor movement, I'm really curious, what you think in terms of the moment we're facing right now and what labor can and should be doing to respond to this moment. I know that's a big question, but I'm curious, just what is on your mind right now, and what should be on the mind of labor's leaders?
Well, things are moving awfully fast, and so I do my best to take a shot at that. But we may know more tomorrow than we know today, and we may know more the day after that. But what we know is, I think, plenty to begin answering your question, as long as we don't think it's definitive and we keep light on our feet, like a good boxer, so that we're able to pivot and respond to the emerging situation here. Basically, I think we can say that our government, our federal government, has been captured by a group of billionaires who have no concern whatsoever for ordinary people. In fact, as you can see, they snicker and get pleasure when they when they do things that involve cruelty, like splitting up families, making children starve, and any number of other depredations that are aimed at terrorizing and immiserating ordinary folks. And we've only seen a few weeks of this, but that appears to be what's going on. That is particularly aimed at organized labor. The people, for example, Elon Musk, who is now, as they say, presidential buddy number one, is a complete opponent of unions. He's actually gone to the Supreme Court to try to have the National Labor Relations Act, which is the primary act providing rights for working people, get it declared unconstitutional. And the Trump administration has done mass firings to public sector workers and has basically halted all the operations of the National Labor Relations Board, which is the one place that workers can go if they get unjustly fired and illegally fired, persecuted in other ways on the job, or refuse even the right to meet and organize themselves on the job. So that's what organized labor is facing. And also not just people who are in unions, but that's really indicative of what's going to happen to working people as a whole. Anybody who has to work for a living is going to be facing the federal government being on the side of their employers in every way that the people in charge of the government can figure out to do. So that's what we're up against. And I think the first piece is to name it and say it, and not pussyfoot around and not say, oh, maybe if we act nice, these people will act nice to us. And we're now seeing the beginning of that with unions and the American Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, Labor Federation, coming out and actually demonstrating in Washington against the policies of the Trump administration. So there's a start there, but it needs to go a lot faster. If workers don't work, Trump and his cronies can't do anything. Right. We're a long way from the kinds of action that would be involved with that. But when Trump stopped the government, had the government shut down in his first regime, we actually came right to the edge of a general strike of public employees to force the reopening of the government, and that forced him to back down. You'll find more about that in my book, Strike, if you want to get a quick refresher course on what happened with the government shutdown that Trump tried to pull off in his first term, and the incredibly effective worker mobilization against it. So I think we have a power there that we can use as working people, that we should have think about how to use and maybe begin testing out some of the steps we can take toward using that power to stop this incredible attack on us. The other thing I'd say about it is that we need a new level of solidarity, not just among people who work directly together in the same workplace, but among workers in different workplaces, in different industries, in different sectors, whether they're high paid or low paid. We're all threatened by this together. And specifically with the attack on government workers, they said they want people in Trump's entourage have said they want to fire as many as a third of all government workers. Well, these are the people who keep our water safe. These are the people who see that our schools are operating. And this is happening at the state level as well as at the federal level. These are the people who fix our roads and see that our traffic systems work. And of course, you can just go on and on and on. It's not that people say, oh, they're going after the government. They're not going after the government. They're going after our society and our ability to live together and have a way of life together here in our country and on our planet. So I think backing each other up, not just different organized union groups, although that's very important. But one of the things I'm trying to work on now is helping people understand that the attack on government workers is also an attack on the climate. Government workers are the people who protect, go to the coal-fired power plants and measure the pollution that they're putting out and make sure that they're not violating the law by putting out even more carbon pollution than they're allowed to, who protect our water supplies, make sure that no industry is dumping poisons into our reservoirs. And of course, I could go on with many other examples. I'm sure all of your viewers here can easily think of those in their own life and the things that are protecting them. So I think we have to think in terms of all of us supporting, in this case, the public sector workers, the government workers who protect us. And I think that's maybe it's going to be the next, since they've been the main first target of the Trump anti-labor, anti-worker attacks. That may be the first part of our defending them and saying, hey, this is not just affecting a worker here and a worker there. That's not what this is really about. This is about destroying the protections that we all need in order to have a safe and decent life. And we need to back these people and make sure that they are protected against this assault on them, because it's really an assault on us.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Jeremy. I think solidarity is the way we pave a path forward, and I appreciate you ending on that. And was there anything else you wanted to leave us with before we let you go?
Oh, this is great. I'm great. We're very happy we're having this discussion. And the one thing I would say that's a lesson of my Green New Deal from Below book is that people who are in the South and the Gulf region, they know that they're up against even tougher problems and challenges than people who may be in other parts of the country, but that isn't stopping people from fighting back, and it isn't stopping people from building pieces of the world that they want to see through the Green New Deal from Below.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Really appreciate your time. And again, the book is The Green New Deal from Below. And I hope folks will check out Labor Network for Sustainability.
Yep. Really appreciate your time.
Great.
There was a comment in the chat said all those solar panels are going, they're going to build where I live will be right up next to homes too, and people are pissed. I think I was able to get the message in between the kind of strange grammar, and it's that people and here's how I know that you listen to too much like conservative radio or conservative online people, because just normal people who are not politics brained like you or me, frankly, right? Like I can, this person, Let's Talk USPS in the chat, like is very clearly a politics brained person, which is fine. I mean, like I'm a politics brained person, right? I live and breathe in the news and I'm constantly thinking about it. I'm constantly reading about it and I'm constantly listening to shows about it. And so, you and me are the same in that way. And because we are that way, we do not think about things in the same way that other people do. And so when I talk to normal people who are not politics brained about this kind of stuff, they think that solar panels and wind farms are cool as shit. Like they just think they look cool. Like I remember before all of this politicization about and polarization around quote unquote clean energy, I remember taking trips to Indiana and Illinois with my parents who are conservative Trump voters. And we literally, I don't even know if it was legal for us to do this, but we literally, at my dad's, a Trump voter, at my dad's interest, pulled off into a wind farm field and like parked next to one of these wind turbines and just looked at it, because we were like, we're just country bumpkins. We ain't never seen nothing. Ain't never been nowhere. This is cool. We're getting power from the wind. Ain't that the coolest shit you ever seen, right? That's what normal people think. They think these wind farms, they look cool. The solar panels, they look cool. And we marvel at the engineering capabilities of the human race, right? That's kind of like, that's my base. Like if you're on the kind of, people don't like the way wind farms looked, like I can just totally, like that is not a normal person opinion.
Well, right. I also don't like Cancer Alley in Louisiana, where fossil fuels literally kill people. Don't like that either. It's also amusing when people think that they are more well-versed on this science than actual scientists. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could believe the scientist, or I could just believe this guy in my YouTube section.
On Facebook.
Yeah.
The meme on Facebook. And then there was another one from Mark saying that if you get fired, you can just get a lawyer. And, Mark doesn't realize it apparently, because Mark is a union letter carrier, that people outside of union workplaces do not have an affirmative right to due process. So if you are fired outside of a union workplace for any reason or no reason at all, you have no recourse unless it is explicitly and provably because of discrimination or some such other illegal thing. But they can fire you for no reason, right? If you work in the private sector and you don't have a union, they can fire you for no reason. And so Mark apparently, and here's another you don't live in the real world kind of thing. You don't understand how the real world works. And this is talking about what is a good job, that conversation with Jeremy. What is a good job? A good job means in part, having dignity on the job and being able to assert your rights and things like this. And so Mark apparently doesn't realize that people outside of union workplaces do not have a right to due process, and they can be fired for any reason or no reason at all, more or less. And I think that's bad. And I think that when management does want to fire somebody and take away their livelihood and put them at risk of economic destitution, that they should have to have cause for that. They should have a system of due process, and employees, workers, should have recourse. And it sounds like Mark thinks they already do have that. He just doesn't know anything. And that's fine. But now you know, hopefully. Here's another one. If workers don't work, Trump can't do anything about it. 60,000 just retired. Here's another thing that Mark doesn't know. Mark apparently doesn't know that something on the order of 120 to 200,000 federal workers leave the government every year for one reason or another. They get a new job, they retire, or something like that. And so you would think with this buyout proposition, which is ostensibly going to be paying you for basically 3/4 of the year without working, that you would get 3/4 at minimum. Like the very, 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 very minimum bar for this buyout to be a success is that it captures everybody that would have retired or left the government over the next 3/4, right? That's the very minimum bar for success. And guess what, Mark? It hasn't reached that yet. They have not even captured every single federal employee that would have retired but for this buyout proposition over the course of the next 3/4. Okay? So, here's, I'm informing you and now you know, but it's easy to see big number and kind of be impressed if you don't know anything. But now you know something about it. So there you go. Do we have Lane Wyndham in the Zoom? Lane Wyndham is not in the Zoom yet. Lane Wyndham is going to be our next guest. So while we're waiting, let's take a look at this Whole Foods situation. Whole Foods workers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania won a union. Very, very excited about that. The first Whole Foods workers in the country to win a union. But now Whole Foods is trying to have the results of that election set aside because there is no quorum at the NLRB. And so this is what we were talking about and what we have been talking about the real world ramifications and the degradations of people's rights on the job when the systems that administer labor law are attacked and degraded. Now, I do not think it is the case, actually, that you have to have a quorum on the National Labor Relations Board in D.C. to be able to certify election results, because those can be certified, particularly when there are no challenges to the election or to the conduct of the election. You can just have the regional director certify those results and the regional staff at the NLRB certify those results. And so I am hopeful that the NLRB and federal courts, if it's appealed to the federal courts, reject this attempt to set aside the election of a union, the election of workers to form a union at Whole Foods in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But I'm not so sure, because additionally, the National Labor Relations Board is no longer defending itself against claims in court that its structure is unconstitutional. And so it is, we're going to be in a totally different place if the entire American regime of labor relations is set aside. And, Mark was talking about in the chat earlier about, you can just get a lawyer. You can just get a lawyer if you're fired. I don't know anything. Well, even the minimum recourses that we have are at risk, including, Mark, your own. Because when the Postal Service, which is kind of organization is strange. It's like a corporation of the federal government. And so it is governed by the National Labor Relations Act, despite being a federal, government kind of entity. But anyway, it's governed by the National Labor Relations Act. Well, guess what, Mark? If the Postal Service, which they would like to do, if the Postal Service is attacked in such a way and they become even more belligerently ignoring of the law than they are now, then even people like you who have protections will not have these legal protections that exist under the law if Trump and Elon Musk have their way. right? And that is why it is important for people like us, even where we disagree on other political issues, but like us, when we recognize an attack on the working class, we need to stand up against it. And so the unions are obviously going to be fighting this kind of stuff, but if the NLRB and the National Labor Relations Act is completely dissolved, we're going to be in a totally different labor relations regime in this country, and we're going to need to be prepared to engage in what were previously illegal actions, potentially, like work stoppages or strikes or things like that. Because ultimately, that is where all of our protections derive from anyways. Why was the National Labor Relations Act instituted? It was instituted because there was too much disruption to production. Workers were being too liberal with their use of the strike weapon, and also the public did not like seeing their co-workers being violently attacked by the state. And so they said, we need an orderly process for this. We need to, kind of get violence out of our labor relations regime. And so that's what the National Labor Relations Act was. If we remove that, we will be going back to a place of increased disruption to production, increased violence, undoubtedly, and it's not going to be good for anybody, frankly. So it's very, 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 very concerning. What about now? Is Lane in the Zoom? Still not in the Zoom. Okay, just let me know when she jumps in. So we are. Did you have anything that you wanted to say on the Whole Foods stuff?
Well, yeah, I think it's a big crisis when the entire legal system that we've operated under since the 30s is under threat. And I think you're right to point to the strike as, it's our best path. It's our power. It's where we can have leverage. The problem is a strike is very difficult to organize. It takes a lot of work. It's risky, right? You're asking people to step out and take a risk. And a lot of our unions have not been striking on a regular basis, right? Strike activity is not something that is anywhere close to the level it was in the 1930s when we won this act. But I really appreciate you bringing up, that history, because we did see a massive upsurge in the 30s of workers organizing other workers. And that is ultimately the solution. To the point that Jeremy was even making earlier, before he wrapped, was the solidarity. We have to build class-wide solidarity. Working people, the vast majority of us, have to unite around our common interest and against our common enemies. And unfortunately, there are a lot of working people who are fooled, who, are consuming propaganda, believe that billionaires and oligarchs and bosses and politicians are, their friend or somehow representing them, which is really unfortunate. But I try to remember that literally billions of dollars are spent trying to confuse people and divide people. And we see the way in which race and gender, religion, and other aspects are used to divide and conquer the working class, because we are the most diverse, right? I mean, just look at it. Bosses, the owners, the rich capitalists tend to be less diverse than the rest of us who actually work for them, who create this labor, who power this economy through our labor and then through our consumption. So it is going to be really, really important that working people don't fall for these these tricks. Solidarity is the answer, not bigotry. And even folks who look different from me, talk different from me, think different from me, if you're a worker, I got your back, and I hope you'll have mine, because ultimately we have to live up to that principle that an injury to one is an injury to all. And whether it's, immigrants or trans folks, unions, anyone else that's under threat, we have to have each other's back, and we have to help each other and look out for one another. And yeah, it's very disheartening when you see folks who have fallen for the propaganda. But all we can do is keep growing our networks, keep having one-on-one conversations, keep building relationships with folks, and then struggling together and taking collective action together, because the collective action is ultimately all we're going to have. If we can't rely on the government, if we can't rely on the laws, we can't rely on the courts, right? Collective action is going to be our path forward. So it's very strange times we're in, very difficult times we're in. Lots coming at us from every direction. So I just encourage people to find the things that you can do to make a positive difference. Find the opportunities in your life to expand your network, to get linked up with organizations doing good work, to get more involved in your union. If you don't have a union yet, don't be scared by what's happening in DC and think that you shouldn't organize. Now is always the time to organize. If you don't have a union yet, you need one.
Right.
So, and that's the energy we have to bring.
As we're wrapping up, we're going to take a look at some of the updates on the letter carriers bargaining, and then I see we have a call on the line, so we'll take that call immediately following this quick update from the letter carriers. So you'll know from the last show that we did that letter carriers overwhelmingly voted down their tentative agreement with the Postal Service. They reopened bargaining on February the 3rd. With the Postal Service. By their constitution, the letter carriers can only continue bargaining for 15 calendar days, so negotiations must conclude no later than February 18th. Brian Renfro has put out a few updates on social media. Here is his update from February the 4th, explaining what the NALC put on the table.
At that meeting today, we presented an economic proposal that included increased general wage increases. It included the elimination of Table 2 and moving every carrier in Table 2 into Table 1, which means that the cost of living adjustment formula would be applied 100% at every step. And it also included the elimination of the city carrier assistant category and moving our craft to an all-career workforce. Article 16 of the Constitution limits this period of negotiations to 15 days, which would take us through Tuesday, February the 18th. So over the next couple of weeks, we will remain constantly engaged with our counterparts at the Postal Service in good faith to improve upon or strike a new tentative agreement potentially that is fair and recognizes and rewards letter carriers for our contributions to the Postal Service.
So, some good contributions. He did not say what kind of, he didn't say exactly what kind of wage increases over the previous contract they're proposing. So that is, I'm sure, frustrating to many letter carriers. He also said later, that was from February the 3rd. On February the 4th, he put out another video where he said that work rules are on the table. But again, just like with the wages, there were not any specifics, so not clear exactly what to make about that. He said that at the conclusion of negotiations, the Executive Council will convene either to send out a new TA or to proceed to arbitration. He also talked about a rally that the National Union is going to be sponsoring on the 13th. Here's what he had to say about that.
Next week, Thursday, February 13th, there will be an event here at NALC headquarters to kick off this campaign using this mantra, fight like hell, in collective bargaining, to get this legislation passed, to fight back against attempts to reduce our retirement benefits or attempts to privatize the Postal Service. We are going to band together and fight. 2025 is a different year. There are attacks that are likely coming our way that we haven't seen in some time. But together we can do what our union has always done, and that is band together, all on the same page, embrace our empowered solidarity, and fight like hell.
So there you go. The rally is not just going to be about contract negotiations. It's going to be about some legislative priorities that the NALC has. So we will keep an eye on this. Obviously, it's going to be pretty fast moving, at least during this phase. Again, contract negotiations must conclude no later than February 18th. So next Saturday will be the last show that we do before contract negotiations conclude. So maybe we'll have some more updates. I mean, that's, 3 update videos from Renfro. And I don't know that we saw any during the, or I'm sure there must have been something over the 2 years of negotiations before that, but it does seem like there's a little bit more kind of interest in communicating what's going on at the bargaining table right now. So that's where we are on that, and like I said, we'll keep an eye on it and keep you posted. We've got a caller on the line, anonymous. I don't know how you did that in the calling queue. Did you do this? I don't know if you did the *67, but what's your name? Where are you calling from? And you can use a pseudonym if you'd like.
Sure, I go by anonymous in a location in the United States.
All right, what's on your mind?
Well, we listened to a lot of, I would say, propaganda from your end on a leftist network here. And the Elon Musk syndrome is real. Don't you like cutting government gloat? Don't you like cutting government waste spending? Evidently not, for how much you trash Doge and Elon Musk. Thank God we finally have something, take it for what it is, to go in and say, hey, Sesame Street, 20 million? What the hell? Helping Iraqis? Oh my God, please. America first, etc. Then, I mentioned or heard you talk about solar panels. Yeah, solar panels wouldn't be that beneficial. Take Texas as an example, when their grid had a major failure with a winter storm. As we get winter storms constantly in the Midwest, Minnesota and Wisconsin in particular. And yeah, it is a problem when you have solar panels by a lot right up next to houses.
Let's take it just one by one really quickly. I have some comments about the solar panels in just a second.
Who had a lot of upset.
Comment about the waste first. Let's take it one by one. I mean, did you you must have been listening. Did you really not hear the message that we had about so-called government waste? Like, there is, to the extent that it exists, which is vastly overstated, it is not more than the private sector, as anybody who has worked in the private sector can tell you. I mean, there's this guy who's a conservative radio host, but I won't say his name because I don't want to get him in trouble with the company, but that I have talked to, that I have never had a conversation with him about his company, his private company, where he does not bash it, where he does not say how stupid the company is and how inefficient the company is and all of this kind of stuff. Like, the idea that the federal government is uniquely wasteful is ridiculous, and they just want to come in and take money for themselves, which is why they are targeting institutions like the Department of Labor or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or things like this. And why, while they're doing that, they're pointing to these little itty-bitty piddly things that may or may not even be objectionable from USAID. I mean, I don't think that anybody with a brain would say that USAID does no good work. And I also don't think anybody with a brain would say that everything that USAID does is good work. But also, if we're going to do something, we should do something out in the open with a, in Congress, like they did with the church committee, where they brought out a lot of corruption within the CIA. But right now, so far, we have not seen any sort of fraud or abuse or anything like that. They have just pointed to programs that they don't like, which is fine, but they're congressionally allocated, and it's important to maintain the separation of powers, right? I mean, we're supposed to be in a constitutional republic, and that's supposed to be an important thing. Do you not understand what we're saying, or does the separation of powers issue and the fact that this is not being done in an open, kind of transparent, actual process, does none of that like bother you?
Well, I'm really glad that we got someone going in saying, look at all the wasted spending. It's about time we have more transparency.
So it doesn't bother you as the
You
answer.
should be happy about this. Unlike, well, it shouldn't bother you as well. I mean, the government's bloated.
That's the answer. It doesn't bother you. So we can move on, because there's like literally nothing
Yeah,
else to talk about.
I'm not bothered by the public knowing about Sesame. Oh, I got plenty to talk about that you're incorrect on.
Well, I mean, that there's nothing to talk about insofar as you don't think it's a problem. As far as the waste goes, you don't think it's a problem. And all of this stuff was already public. Like, you can already see how much Sesame Street gets from the public. Sesame Street has always been a public access television show. It's always been taxpayer funded. Like, that's always been the case. And so people are just seeing stuff on Elon Musk's Twitter account, and it's all, and that's like, you just don't have a problem with that part of the process, and it doesn't seem recognize the kind of the two-step that's going to be going on here, where they're going to be attacking really important institutions like the CFPB and the EPA and stuff like that. If there's anything that is factually inaccurate that I've said, I'd be interested to know it. But if not, I can talk about the solar panels and how, I worked in energy at the Corps of Engineers, right? So I've talked to energy experts and energy engineers about solar panels, and we have had conversations about how solar panels are not appropriate in every environment. And I have been part of discussions where we have limited or not included solar panels as a part of a project before, because it's not appropriate for the environment. So we can have conversations about that, but just saying, all I was saying in response to the comment about, I don't like the way that solar panels look, is just that's not a normal thing to say. That is a right-wing politics-brained thing to say. That's not a normal person concern. And we can talk about geographically, there are places where solar panels are better suited and they're less suited. But I don't like the way they look. That's just not normal, right?
Well, for one, I'm not complaining about the way they look, but if I was living next to a solar, quote-unquote, farm, by the way, they use the term farm so they can reduction on taxes for the land they buy. It's a joke. They're not a farm, okay? They're just using tax codes and cheat ways to buy land for cheaper. So, and also getting rid of solar panels is a problem too. I mean, I sat in on a meeting with Tom Tiffany, going over all this, and he brought in a whole team, and we had plenty of concerned citizens, voicing their concerns. It was really informative to sit down and listen to the concerns of it. And yeah, we're going to have snow covering the solar panels. We're going to have ice and snow build up on them. It's going to happen. We're going to have grid issues with it. So, Minnesota wants to shut down their coal plant, and many of them, thanks to Democrats, by the way. So then we'll rely on solar panels, thanks to Democrats, by the way. So, just problem after problem with Democrats. Democrats want bigger government. They want the Green New Deal, Green New Scam, by the way. They want open borders. They want illegal immigration en masse to then get more voters. That's all really it is. They want to take care of them more than Americans do. I don't know why you even promote any of this. I mean, it's baffling. And you just need to get the TDS syndrome out of your head. Same with Elon Musk. Be happy there's a program there, going in, taking a look, sharing it on X, a big platform to amplify the message. You said, oh, it's always public. Okay, yeah, let me go get a FOIA request that nobody's going to pay attention to or hear me about.
It's not. You don't have to have you don't have to do a FOIA request. You can just go look at it. Here's a question. Would you imagine that? You mentioned Minnesota, like the energy like there's a big energy problem. They're cutting coal, and so presumably you would imagine that would increase the cost of energy. Do you imagine that Alabama or Minnesota has a higher average utility bill?
So I'm starting to realize I'm being cut off. If anyone's wondering why I'm being cut off, it's because of the host is doing it. So I probably said a lot of things that didn't get in the clip. So what are you asking again? Something about the energy costs going up?
Yeah. I mean, you started going on multiple different just like talking points and not talking about specific issues. And so I wanted to narrow in, and then we're going to have to let you go. We got another caller on the line, and we're running up on the end. But you mentioned Minnesota is, they're ending coal power plants for solar production. And I don't know anything about the geography of Minnesota.
Yeah,
I don't know if it makes, I don't know what, where it makes sense to have solar panels. I don't know where it doesn't. And I don't know the veracity of the claim that they're cutting down or that they're ending coal power plant production. Probably they are. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm just saying for the audience, I don't know. Would you imagine that the utility bills in crazy Democrat Minnesota are higher or lower than the beacon of freedom that is the Republican state of Alabama?
Well, first of all, you got Tim Walz, who flew to China and did many projects there. So, he likes China. And you got China building coal plants left and right. Where are we going to get our coal from?
Answer the question. Would Minnesota's utility bills be higher or lower than Alabama's? In your imagination.
Well, you answer me this. Why is China building so many coal plants, and why are we okay with it if Democrats want to get rid of coal plants?
Anonymous, we're gonna. You can have one more chance to answer the question, then we're gonna have to let you go and get to the other call. Had you on for about 10 minutes.
I am not concerned about the price of Alabama versus Minnesota right now. Give it time, okay?
Okay. Well, there you go. So
you got Chi-Com, Tim Walz.
Appreciate the call. We'll let you go, and I hope you call in again. Appreciate the call. Hope you call in again. Here's the answer. Alabama, Republican-governed Alabama, every single constitutional office in the state has been Republican for basically the last 15 years or so, and it has been conservative for the last 80 years. It was the Dixiecrats that were ruling Alabama until 2010. The last time we had a real kind of progressive government in the state of Alabama was probably Jim Folsom in 1956. And so we've been run by conservatives for longer than I've been alive, right? Alabama has one of the highest, top 10 highest utility bills in the country, in part because the Republican Public Service Commission, which is supposed to regulate Alabama Power, which is our utility in most of the state of Alabama, has not held a rate increase hearing in the last, how long has it been? 30 or 40 years? Every time Alabama Power asks for a rate increase, the Public Service Commission just gives it to them without even making them justify it. And so that's how you see in the state of Alabama citizens paying some of the highest taxes or some of the highest utility bills in the country. And you can even see within the state the difference between having your power being run by the private sector versus the public sector, because in the north of Alabama, we get our power from the Tennessee Valley Authority. Our power in North Alabama, in Huntsville, and across the rest of the northern part of the state is 30% less than the rest of the state. Where the rest of the state pays utility bills on average of like $180 a month or something, in Huntsville, it's like $130 a month, okay? And Minnesota, this is crazy that it's like that you mentioned that you mentioned this as a part of the thing, of the energy thing. Minnesota is in the top 10 lowest states for electricity bills. I literally didn't know anything about Minnesota's energy program at all before your call, but you mentioned it. You were the one that brought it up, not me. You brought it up. Presumably because, they're doing so much harm to their citizens because of their crazy energy policies. So I looked it up. I was like, I wonder, because I know that Alabama's utility bills are some of the highest in the country. So it's like, I wonder what Minnesota's utility bills are like. What are the 10 lowest? That's crazy. That is like, literally, like after we go off the air, I want you to just sit and think about that. Like, you brought up Minnesota because you thought that it would help your argument that Democrats are bad on energy and bad for consumers, presumably on energy, right? Like, you brought that up. And after literally 5 seconds on Google, I was able to see that Minnesota has one of the 10 lowest electricity bills in the country. That is crazy. That is wild. Okay. We've got...
Well, Jacob, I just want you to know, I've been convinced. I've been convinced because, like, you made this argument for, follow the Constitution, follow the laws. You forgot you could post about it on X.
You could post about it on X.
You could post about it on X and, like,
without a hearing or without any opportunity for anybody to rebut any of the absolutely ridiculous claims that you are making. You can just say it without any sort of... I did forget about that. You're right.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that our caller reminded me that you can do that.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for listening. We love the engagement. Keep on keeping on, brother.
Keep on at it. Last caller from 617 area code. 617 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? (617) area code. You're on the air. 617. What's your name? Where are you calling from? And they hung up. All right. Well, there you go. All right. Well,
interesting. And we've had an interesting show today. Interesting collection of people in the chat. That's for sure. Yeah, appreciate everyone tuning in. What we do is try to advocate for working class folks. We're not partisan in the sense that, we're loyal to a particular party. We are loyal to working class folks as a broad spectrum of folks. And that's what we care about. And we recognize that organizing in the workplace, organizing unions, building union power is essential for working class folks to have a better life and a better future. We are facing a lot of threats at the national level, at the local and state level. We're facing a lot of issues that are impacting, almost everyone we know, right, from some direction or another. And solidarity is going to be really, really important in the days and weeks and years ahead. Building relationships with other working people and uniting around our common interest. And I think, there is a lot of propaganda out there, and that's going to be difficult to navigate. What we do is just try to call balls and strikes and, be critical of folks when we think they deserve to be criticized. And be real with folks about, what we think and what's important to union members and to working class people, particularly here in the South. So, if you think we're, Democratic talking point, machines or whatever, I'm sorry, you're confused. We care about working class folks taking power in our own hands and building a better future, a better world. We, as the working class, have been getting our butt kicked for decades now, and it's really time for things to change and get better for us. And that's only going to happen if we actually come together, and we can't fall for this divisionary crap, right? Like, people want you to be upset at trans folks. People want you to be upset at immigrants. People want you to be upset at government workers. Why?
Yeah.
Because they benefit from this, right? They benefit. The owners, the elites, the wealthy ruling class benefits when we are divided. So we have to stick together, and we can't fall for that kind of crap.
Yeah. And also, the Democrats in the state of Alabama, to the extent that they know us, they would also be surprised to hear that we're Democrat propaganda machines, because the House Minority Leader, the Democratic House Minority Leader in the state of Alabama, literally has me blocked on Twitter because Because I asked him, and this was last year, the year before or something, when he passed. No, it must have been last year, because they passed the overtime tax cut bill, and he was part of the signing, and they signed the bill in the lobby of Hyundai, in one of Hyundai's lobbies. And this was only like a couple of months after all the child labor stuff was coming out. And so I was like, this was your bill. Why did you allow it to be done at Hyundai, this anti-worker, anti-union, child-exploiting company? Why would you do it in their lobby of all places? There are union halls all across the state of Alabama. They're even better employers than Hyundai. Why did you do it at Hyundai? And he blocked me. So, us being Democrat mouthpieces would also be a shock to Democrats in the state of Alabama, because they're not big fans of they're not big fans of me. So anyway, that's gonna be it. Adam, do you have any plugs?
Go to labornotes.org/events. Check out any trainings they have. Now is a great time to be doing training in your local. If you're looking for resources, go to labornotes.org. I really encourage you to check out some of the resources they have. They have training guides. They have an entire curriculum called Beating Apathy. Really good stuff. So if you need resources, that's a good place to go. I want to plug EWOC, the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee. If you're listening and you're not really sure where to get started on a union journey, but you know that you need representation, you know that you need to come together with your coworkers, reach out to them. They're a good first step. They will help get you plugged into the right direction. And really, I appreciate everyone tuning in, appreciate all the engagement. Keep it coming. Let us know who you would like on the show. Let us know what you want us to talk about. We, always open to hearing that. And really appreciate all the support. Can't do it without you. So appreciate that. Stay involved. Keep getting involved. Keep getting other people involved. We've got to rebuild this labor movement so that we can have the people power to win a better life for ourselves and our community. And keep on with it. Stay strong. It's really tough out there right now. Really dark times for a lot of people. So I just check on people, check in with your loved ones, check in on your friends and coworkers and union siblings, and look out for one another. That's what we have to do with tough times ahead.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week.